Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The small town of Mason Hollow lay nestled between dense pine forests and ominous granite cliffs, its tranquility masking a dark past. For years it had boasted its all-American charm, a picturesque main street lined with antique shops and family-owned cafes. But beneath the surface, secrets festered like wounds hidden from the light. The tranquil landscape would soon bear witness to a crime that would shake its very foundations. It was a Tuesday morning in mid-September when the discovery was made. A local jogger, pushing through the familiar trail that skirted the edge of Flintwood Creek, stumbled upon something that would forever alter the course of the town's history. The soft, damp earth had revealed a makeshift grave, only partially concealed by a hastily stacked barricade of fallen branches. At first, the jogger assumed it was simply a forgotten remnant of nature's work, a decomposing animal. It wasn't until the scent hit him, sharp and unmistakable, that his thoughts turned darker. As the news spread, shockwaves rippled through the tight-knit community. The peace they had taken for granted had been shattered, and with it, the illusions of safety. Every resident soon found themselves questioning the very fabric of their lives. How could something so grotesque happen here? And who could commit such an unimaginable act? The authorities set to work, unleashing a torrent of investigative fervor that would dissect Mason Hollow's history, revealing the hidden fractures among its residents and a tapestry of grudges too complicated for outsiders to grasp. With every turn of the investigation, the town's charming facade peeled away to expose the raw, vulnerable truths that lay beneath. The victim, Rebecca Larkin, was a name synonymous with warmth in Mason Hollow. A dedicated school teacher, she had spent over a decade shaping the minds and futures of the town's children. With her infectious laugh and penchant for hosting weekend book clubs, she had become a beloved figure, fostering a sense of community among parents and youths alike. But behind her jovial exterior lay a life riddled with complexities that few could have ever imagined. Born and raised in Mason Hollow, Rebecca appeared to have an adoring husband, Daniel, who had a steady job at the local hardware store in a charming home just a few blocks from the school. However, as the autumn leaves began to fall, it became clear that Rebecca's life was tinged with shadows. Friends had noticed her waning smile and the escalating arguments with Daniel. They insisted the rumors were nothing but resentment over tightening finances. But deep down, Rebecca wrestled with feelings of loneliness and isolation, believing no one could grasp the depths of her discontent. Only days before the tragic discovery, Rebecca had confided in a trusted colleague, expressing her growing worries. "It's as if the walls are closing in on me," she said, biting her lip in concern. "I just feel trapped." Those words would later echo hauntingly in the minds of those she left behind. Added to Rebecca's riddles was a hint of a secret relationship, a text message sent late at night that had crossed paths with her husband's gaze. In Mason Hollow, where everyone knew everyone else's business, the fallout was inevitable. As the investigation unfolded, police delved into her life, capturing glimpses of the woman she was. A complex blend of strength and fragility joy, and to understand what had befallen Josephine meant unraveling the tangled web of her existence. The crime scene. The morning air hung heavy with a sense of foreboding as forensic teams converged on Flintwood Creek. Crime scene tape fluttered ominously in the cool breeze, marking the boundaries of a night. The water's gurgling chorus took on an unsettling quality as investigators worked methodically, their muted voices echoing against the surrounding trees. Nature remained untouched and indifferent to the tragedy that had unfolded just a stone's throw from the bustling town. The grave, small yet deliberate, revealed a tragedy far graver than any public speculation could anticipate. Forensic anthropologists set to work, carefully gathering evidence while preserving the integrity of the site. As they brushed away layers of earth, they unearthed fragments of Rebecca's life pieces of clothing, a watch halted at the moment of her death, and remnants of a carefully folded letter, now sodden and illegible. Each item added a haunting layer to the investigation, each detail intertwining with a narrative yet untold. Nearby, a pair of investigators took turns scanning the forest floor with metal detectors, searching for overlooked clues that might point them toward Rebecca's last moment. The area bore no signs of a struggle, no visible sign that suggested what had happened or why. Yet, as they continued to dig deeper, something else emerged: a small silver locket, tarnished but intact. Inside were photographs of Rebecca and Daniel, blissful smiles trapped in a desperate bid for love. Had there been a shift in their relationship, darker than anyone had assumed? As the sun sliced through the morning fog, officials sealed off areas for an exhaustive search. The local police, accompanied by volunteer search parties, began canvassing the surrounding woods, speaking to residents, and searching for anyone who may have seen something out of place. As questions lingered in the air, a sense of dread became palpable, the realization that this was about to change everything in Mason Hollow, possibly forever. The early investigation. Hours turned into days as detectives immersed themselves in the complexities of Rebecca's life. Each officer felt the weight of the case, burdened by the urgency to uncover the truth. Their initial focus revolved around those closest to her: family, friends, and colleagues. The first suspect, naturally, was her husband, Daniel, who had been at work at the hardware store the morning of her disappearance. But as they quickly learned, the veneer of innocence often cloaked deeper entanglements. Detective Samantha Hayes, known for her unwavering determination, took lead on the investigation. She probed into Daniel's alibi. Witnesses confirmed he had been present, completing inventory and preparing for the upcoming fall sales. Yet, more intriguing were the snippets of conversation she gathered from Rebecca's close friends. Wow! Whispers of their marital discord surfaced, painting a vivid picture of a couple struggling behind closed doors. As she sat at her desk, combing through notes and interviews, one question lingered. Was there more Daniel than met the eye? Meanwhile, the investigation turned towards the school where Rebecca had dedicated so much of her life. Colleagues reported a tight-knit environment filled with camaraderie, but didn't shy away from citing recent tensions within the faculty. Strange encounters between Rebecca and a fellow teacher, Dan. A charismatic and ambitious newcomer caught Hayes' attention. A few of Rebecca's closer friends recounted hushed conversations and fleeting glances exchanged between Rebecca and Adam, signs of a connection beyond just teaching. In a bid to form a clearer picture, Hayes sought to construct a timeline of Rebecca's last known movements, meticulously gathering surveillance footage from various locations. As the pieces began to align, an unsettling narrative took shape. Within the perceived safety of Mason Hollow, hidden complexities of love and despair unfurled, each thread pulling closer towards a reality that threatened to shatter the town's innocence. The dead ends. Days quickly morphed into weeks, each one bringing new challenges yet also mounting frustration. Detective Hayes found herself wrestling with the growing web of leads that frequently sputtered out, swallowed by shadows. The town of Mason Hollow, so eager to aid in the investigation, had become saturated with gossip and speculation. Nevertheless, the truth continued to elude the fiery detective, leaving her grappling with questions that seemed to multiply with each twist. As the investigation advanced, police conducted thorough interviews with students from Rebecca's classroom. None offered any significant insights. Their youthful innocence rendered them unaware of the undercurrents swirling around their beloved teacher. Turning to the school staff, however, proved to be equally vexing. Adam, the colleague many pointed to as an admirer, insisted that any perceived connection was merely professional, painting himself as a mentor rather than a potential suspect. The enthusiasm in his explanations hardly swayed Hayes, who could sense an enigmatic friction simmering beneath the surface. Frequent follow-up interviews with Daniel yielded consistent yet vague responses, more concerned with his own grief than illuminating Rebecca's life. He claimed to have no knowledge of her whereabouts or her feelings in those final days. Frustration mounted within Hayes as she felt he might be withholding critical information, yet tangible evidence to hold him back was nothing but a wisp of a cloud. As investigators pored over location data from Rebecca's last known phone records, another dead end emerged. The cell tower signals revealed no unusual patterns, no secret rendezvous marked by logs or errant calls. The longer the investigation stretched, the higher the stakes loomed. Social media speculation worsened. Neighbors eyed each other suspiciously, and old friendships felt the strain. The community's trust in their idyllic surroundings teetered precariously, just as Hayes attempted to untangle the increasingly enmeshed lives of the town's residents. A break in the case, after what felt like an eternity of paths leading nowhere. A flicker of hope illuminated the investigation when Detective Hayes received an unexpected call from the forensics lab. A minute piece of evidence discovered at the crime scene was ready for analysis. Initial testing on the items extracted from the grave revealed traces of an unfamiliar DNA profile, raising new questions about Rebecca's final moment. The discovery felt like a thread had finally frayed, pulling apart the fabric of uncertainty that shrouded Mason Hollow. As the lab data made its way to Hayes, an urgency ignited within the precinct. The profile would require comparisons against the local database, one populated with known offenders, as well as any previous criminal records. But Hayes couldn't shake the feelinga gnawing instinct that the answer wouldn't be found simply by combing through files. With renewed determination, she rallied her team for a detailed re-examination of Rebecca's relationships and contacts, especially focusing on anyone who had resided in town during the past few years. It was during this meticulous re-examination that an old acquaintance resurfaced, a name from the past whose mere mention sent ripples of unrest through the town. Lenny Walker, a former resident who had been embroiled in his own share of trouble years ago. Once a friend of Daniel's, Lenny had been accused of minor offenses, yet never brought to justice. After a string of unsettling incidents, he vanished from Mason Hollow, leaving behind haunting memories and whispered rumors of a violent temper. Investigations revealed Lenny's links to several unsolved crimes in the area, lending credence to the possibility that he had crossed paths with Rebecca. Meanwhile, the DNA results came in, confirming the match with a trace left during one of Lenny's previous run-ins with the law. The constellation of correlating evidence now pointed toward a potential confrontation with Rebecca that may have spiraled down a dark path. The moment felt electrifying, a strange blend of apprehension. The nature of the investigation had shifted entirely. Answers the town craved were now veiled in shadows that held gripping stories of fear and desperation. The suspect, with the match to Lenny Walker's DNA raising alarm bells, Detective Hayes wasted no time in tracking down leads regarding his whereabouts. Her investigation revealed a troubling history. After leaving Mason Hollow, Lenny had spent time in nearby cities, but recent sightings placed him back in town, lurking beneath a veneer of normalcy. Meanwhile, whispers of his reappearance worked their way through the community, a strong undercurrent of anxiety amongst residents who had long hoped he would remain a ghost of the past. As Hayes orchestrated a tactical strike to apprehend Lenny, a sense of unease wrapped around her and her team. They understood that bringing in a volatile figure with a history of aggression carried considerable risks. Officers secured intelligence from both informants and residents who'd encountered Lenny roaming about town. Each mention of him sparked concern, but no one dared to share their deeper fears regarding any possible connection to Rebecca or the aftermath of her murder. When they located Lenny, he was living in a dimly lit, rundown motel on the outskirts of town. As officers positioned themselves outside the building, Hayes prepared herself for the confrontation. Memories of conversations about his unpredictable nature weighed heavily on her as she imagined the man behind the name. With the townsfolk, Lenny's apprehension went smoothly in the end. Fragile silence hung in the air as he complied, eyes darting in defiance, but his body showed signs of surrender. Hayes couldn't shake the sense of incredulity that filled her. As they transported him to the station, she contemplated the depth of his alleged involvement in Rebecca's life or death. Could he simply be a pawn in a greater game? Or was he the catalyst for the tragedy that had shattered Mason Hollow? Interrogation began almost immediately, shrouded in a tense atmosphere that left many questions lingering. Lenny's stories were riddled with half-truths, shifting like shadows under scrutiny. Each attempt to protect himself raised more doubts than it dispelled, yet he seemed to exude an unsettling calm, providing an enigmatic barrier that kept the truth at bay. The trial. The courtroom in Mason Hollow was packed, the air thick with tension as citizens awaited the first day of Lenny Walker's trial. The small-town atmosphere transformed into a buzzing flurry of anticipation, lending an electric energy that enveloped the proceedings. Debates of guilt and innocence filled the minds of attendees, each grappling with their view of a man many had known, around whom darkness now coiled. Detective Hayes took her place among the witnesses. The case against Lenny, meticulously crafted through weeks of unrelenting investigation, would soon be laid bare before the jury. The prosecution struggled to maintain momentum, rapidly assembling evidence that included the DNA match, witness testimonies about Lenny's temper, and relationships with both Daniel and Rebecca. Contrastingly, Lenny's defense team crafted a portrait of his troubled history. Calling into question his ability to receive a fair trial. It was a strategic move designed to spark doubt, but it only intensified the public's contempt toward him. Sitting in the front row, Daniel wore a stoic mask, though a flicker of anger danced within his eyes. He was a central character in this unfolding drama, grappling with the involvement of his past friendships, while desperately seeking justice for the loss of his wife. The absurdity of consciousness echoed around him, friends, now turned foes, and a town divided by the very act of murder. Over several tense days, the prosecution unveiled its narrative, revealing not just facts, but also the emotions that loomed large in Mason Hollow. The courtroom bore witness to a heartbreaking reconstruction of Rebecca's final moments, framing Lenny as a vengeful specter from the past whose anger with the world had led to an irrevocable choice. Hayes described the crime scene, standing firm as she recounted her discovery of evidence, while Lenny's half-hearted laughter punctuated the tension, sending whispers through the gallery. During cross-examination, cracks formed in the defense's arguments. Lenny struggled, his facade peeling away under persistent questioning. With every inquiry that poked at his tumultuous relationship to both Rebecca and the people they tangled with, he slipped deeper into shadows, struggling for control. Each utterance branded him further in the minds of those present. And while the trial would often feel like a poker game of shifting power, it was the tragic past that would ultimately decide the outcome. Weeks passed as both sides found their footing, leading to a monumental culmination, closing arguments where the air grew heavy with certainty. The fate of Lenny Walker lay firmly in the hands of the jury, wrapped in the delicate weight of the truth obscured within a tapestry of pain. The aftermath. The verdict echoed through the courtroom, reverberating like thunder across Mason Hollow. Lenny Walker was found guilty of Rebecca Larkin's murder, the weight of the jury's decision settling heavily upon a town still reeling from grief and trauma. While his conviction provided a sense of closure, the emotional wounds ran deeper than any judicial ruling could heal. The echoes of a life lost spiraled through the community, haunting every corner. In the weeks following the trial, the town struggled to regain its footing. Memories of Rebecca bloomed anew, rekindled in the hearts of the residents who had known her laughter and kindness. Vigils were organized, moments of silence observed in schools, and her image adorned the walls of classrooms. The painful reminder of her absence lingered like a ghost that walked among the living, coloring even the most cheerful gatherings with an underlying sense of loss. Detective Hayes, once immersed in the whirlwind of investigation, now found herself grappling with a haunting realization. Solving the case had been only the beginning. In the aftermath, she faced the reality of its impact on the community. She organized meetings with support groups, encouraging neighbors to share their feelings and find common ground in collective healing. Conversations shifted from fear to understanding, slowly knitting the torn fabric of Mason Hollow back together. Daniel, meanwhile, was left to wrestle with his own demons. The turmoil of the trial had exposed the fractures in his marriage and forced him to confront his sorrow. Friends offered solace, yet the ache for his lost wife clung to him, wrapping around his heart like barbed wire. With each day that passed, he realized that healing wouldn't come easily. It would take time, patience, and perhaps forgiveness directed inward. In the quiet early mornings, as the sun would rise over the sleepy streets, Hayes often wandered to Flintwood Creek, reflecting on the shadows hidden beneath its peaceful surface. Her thoughts churned, consumed by the duality of life and death that flowed through the veins of Mason Hollow. The town had weathered a storm, emerging forever altered. Though Lenny would now serve his time in prison, the scars of tragedy lingered, etching the memory of Rebecca into the hearts of all who had loved her. In time, as the seasons changed, Mason Hollow learned to hold both pain and hope in a delicate balance, occasionally grasping at the idea of moving forward, while forever tethered to the past. Reflection. As the autumn leaves began to fall, an intricate tapestry of emotions enveloped Mason Hollow, bridging the chasm between loss and healing. Communities from nearby towns gathered to remember Rebecca, sharing stories of her kindness at gatherings that felt more like reunions of families than mere memorial. It was a sentiment that filled the air with warmth, yet the specter of tragedy remained, a reminder that life can pivot unexpectedly at any given moment. Detective Hayes often found herself revisiting the places that had once felt foreign yet familiar. Each stroll through the quiet streets reminded her of Rebecca's laughter that echoed through the classrooms, now tinged with melancholy. Even as justice was served, it became apparent that the town would bear the imprint of sorrow for generations, a solemn reminder of the fragility of peace. Late one evening, as Hayes sat at her kitchen table surrounded by photographs of the case, she felt a profound sense of connection to Rebecca's memory. It was a devotion to the small acts of resilience that simmered within the town, the flowers that sprouted amid the cracks in the pavement, and the simple smiles exchanged between neighbors. In seeking the truth, she had come to understand something far greater: the importance of cherishing every fleeting moment. Then the stories woven into a community's fabric. In the quiet comfort of the night, Hayes penned a letter to Rebecca, intertwining grief with celebration. In its pages, she envisioned a future where love would outshine loss, where the community could reclaim their sense of joy while honoring the one they had lost. As she sealed the envelope, hope took root in her heart. It signified that healing, though arduous, was within reach, and that the essence of Rebecca would forever resonate in Mason Hollow.